My problem with fat acceptance and fat positivity is not actually with the fat side of the equation. It's actually questioning what we mean by positivity, by taking a positive attitude towards something. And in this video, I want to reflect on that a little bit. And for those of you who come to this video identifying as fat positive people, I hope I can actually lead you to question what that means and what you're going to do with that concept moving forward. And for those of you who are just sitting back shocked and horrified by the social media phenomenon of fat acceptance and fat positivity, maybe I can give you a more positive angle on it and a way to move forward. I'm not joking. I hope this video serves a positive purpose for some of you. And this video is also in part a response to the unique character of Andrew Marlowe, who made a video that inspired me to record this one, shall we say. Andrew Marlowe is not fat himself, but he identifies as a chubby admirer. He's a man who prefers the company of overweight women. If somebody tells you they've had an accident, they're now disabled, and they're going to spend the rest of their life in a wheelchair, they may share this news with you, and they may try to convey to you that they have a positive attitude. Or they may talk you through a series of positive steps they're taking to cope with the problem, to do the best with the situation they find themselves in. They're going through a process of probably making modifications to their car so they can get a wheelchair into it and out of it. They may be having to make modifications to their bathroom. They may, of course, be having trouble with staircases. And you might say back to them, this friend of yours, this relative or colleague of yours, you might say back to them, wow, it's really great that you have such a positive attitude toward the fact that you're now confined to a wheelchair. But in this context, positivity does not mean that you're disregarding the nature of the problem. It means you're confronting the problem and doing the best you can. I had a job when I lived in Thailand, and I think in that office, I was the only able-bodied person. Everyone else had quite serious physical disabilities. There was one woman in a wheelchair. Every single time she had to go to the bathroom, she would phone her husband or phone a friend who I think worked in the stock room in a different part of the complex to come up and physically lift her out of her wheelchair, put her on the toilet, wait outside, and then take her off the toilet and put her back in her wheelchair. Right? I mean, she had a wonderful life in many ways. I lived around her. I got to know her. In many ways, she had a better life than I did. In many ways, she has a better life than I do now. You know, she'd really gotten organized. You could say she had a very positive attitude towards coping with her disability. But there's no doubt it's a problem. In her daily life, I remember seeing her husband take her out of her wheelchair and physically carry her up a flight of stairs. And for her, that was, if not an everyday phenomenon, you know, it was a regular part of her life, was relying on other people to lift her and carry her and then move her wheelchair for her and so on. And, you know, to say she had a positive attitude would be in no way comparable to this model of positivity whereby people are now encouraging those who are extremely overweight to live and behave and dress and conduct themselves as if this is not an encumbrance to them at all, as if the problem is not a problem, as if it doesn't exist. Now, just like that woman in the wheelchair, many of these extremely overweight people will have difficulty getting up and down a staircase. Just like the woman in a wheelchair, these extremely overweight people will have a great deal of trouble getting onto and getting off of a public bus. They'll have a great deal of trouble, say, walking up a hill. The difference is there's something they can do about it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon their disability is, in a very real sense, within their power to alleviate, to improve, to solve. Their condition can end. Whereas that specific woman, that coworker of mine, was never going to change. She was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. She was born with malformed legs. There was no way for her to recover. So imagine how strange it must be for her to look at people who are part of the so-called fat positivity movement. See people who are disabling themselves and who claim they have a positive attitude about it. And to see someone like Andrew Marlowe, who applauds this, apparently because it is ultimately his sexual fetish, and says they can do anything they want to do, they can be anything they want to be. Well, can they, Andrew? Can they walk up a flight of stairs? Can they ride a public bus? Can they indeed, after a certain point, even use a public toilet? All of these things in life become difficult. And I know this to some extent because now living in a Western society, I'm surrounded by people who are at different stages of self-inflicted disability just due to extreme obesity. Now, yes, they should have a positive attitude. They should be encouraged to have a positive attitude the same way the disabled person in a wheelchair should have a positive attitude. Being in denial about the nature of the problem, the nature of the hard work that's ahead of you in terms of coping with that problem or improving it, ameliorating it, whatever you want to say. We can't confuse positivity with denialism. And I don't want to be part of a culture that celebrates self-delusion and denialism, neither in modern Western internet culture, nor, say, within the culture of Theravada Buddhism in Southeast Asia. I used to be a Buddhist living in countries like Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and you get into very different types of positive thinking, self-delusion there. You get into very different types of positive thinking, self-delusion, and left-wing politics, and all these different theaters I've been involved in. Look, guys, I'm going to be self-critical here for a second. I'm unemployed. I have a positive attitude toward being unemployed. I'm really seriously and sincerely trying to make the most out of this period of unemployment, and not just in terms of looking for a job. My girlfriend and I right now are going through a stack of books that includes Aristotle, Plato, Xenophon, Cicero. We're going through some of the foundational texts of Western philosophy, political science. Thucydides, again, for those who don't know me, we're doing some heavy reading. We're learning how to bake. We're making a lot of our food from scratch. We're baking our own bread, obviously from flour. We're making our own soy milk from scratch too, working from whole soybeans. We're finding ways to both save money and educate ourselves and improve ourselves with the time that we've got. Time, a sort of opportunity that's created by unemployment. So I'd say I have a positive attitude toward my unemployment. But think about how really sick and self-defeating and debilitating it would be for me if I had an unemployment positive attitude in the same sense as these many people on the internet preach a fat positive attitude, which from my perspective is not truly positive at all. If I was unemployment positive in the same sense that Andrew Marlowe talks about being fat positive, if I went around pretending fundamentally that one, this isn't a problem, that two, this isn't my responsibility. And please keep in mind, there's a subtle and profound difference between saying this is your responsibility and saying this is your fault. I knew one person, personally, was a friend of mine, who actually became very overweight, very obese, and it wasn't his fault. It was due to medical malpractice, not worth going into the details, but he was strapped down and hospitalized and fed a diet through a tube, and the doctors gave him something like 10 times more food than he was supposed to be getting through a tube, and he couldn't even talk. He went through surgery, and he came out of the surgery greatly overweight. It wasn't his fault. There are extreme cases like that. But ultimately, apportioning fault is irrelevant to what we're talking about here. We're talking about responsibility. It was his responsibility. It was his problem. It was his challenge. What are you going to do about it now? Certainly, it's an extreme contrast. Someone who's born with a disability is in a wheelchair. It's not their fault, but it's their challenge. It's their responsibility. What they're going to do about it, in terms of their positive attitude or otherwise, it's up to them. But there's no way we can proceed from a denial of the fundamental reality of the situation. This is a problem. It's your problem. And it's your responsibility. But of all these examples, I've got to say, it's definitely not in the power of that disabled person to stand up out of their wheelchair and learn how to walk again. It may or may not be in my power to get a job. This is the reality of unemployment, always has been. I can do my best, but nobody can guarantee a positive outcome to that situation. Nobody, right? But it definitely is in your power, starting today, to pursue a positive outcome that solves obesity. It's in your power. It's in mine. If anything is under our control, it's the question of what goes into our mouths. And all of us as vegans or aspiring vegan activists, obviously, if we felt we were powerless over our diet, our political and moral movement would make no sense at all. So likewise, it can't make any sense at all if we regard people as passive victims of their own body type instead of being active, decisive players in a game in which their own health and their own capacity to make a positive difference in the world is very much on the line, very much being decided, and in this case being diminished, by fundamentally matters of self-indulgence, lack of discipline, etc. I talk a lot on this channel about a very simple ethical idea that I know is out of style. It's the idea of doing the best you can. I talked to a man a couple of weeks ago, and his doctor told him that he has to lose 80 pounds just to be overweight. He won't lose 80 pounds to be thin. He'll lose 80 pounds to get out of the category of being at risk for sudden death, basically. It's a huge challenge for him. He's got to lose 80 pounds, and he'll still be fat. He'll still be overweight. And I gave him encouragement. I told him some positive things from my experience, and I offered to put him in touch with. I know someone here who's a vegan trainer, runs a small gym. I tried to be helpful. How could it possibly help him for me to look in his eyes and say, no, you're not fat. That's just a figment of your imagination. That's just a matter of self-image. That's just an attitude or a state of mind.